This Sicha is a Sicha for Savo and Chai Elul, meaning it's the connection between this Parsha, Savo and Chai Elul. The Rebbe starts off the Sicha by explaining and saying that Chai Elul, which is the Yom Haledos of the Shnei Moedes HaGdolim, the two great luminaries, the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of Toras Chassidus HaKlalos, General Chassidus, and the Alter Rebbe, the founder of Toras Chassidus Chabad, always falls near Shabbos Parsha Savo or on Shabbos Parsha Savo itself. Now, since we know that all the Yomim Tovim of the year, which are called Moedim is from the word Miyuah, the designated time with a specific content, are always hinted in the Parshas of the Torah that are read during those times when these Yomim Tovim fall, we need to say that in Parsha Savo is hinted the Toichen, the content of Chai Elul, especially that Chai Elul too is called a Yom Tov and a Moed as it is known. The Rebbe says the name of our Sedra, which in the name is indicated as it's known, the Toichen, the content of the whole Sedra, is Savoy or Ki Savoy. The translation of Savoy Ela Oretz means after the Yidden not only came into the land, but after they took over the land and after they settled in the land. And this is true not only in this parsha where it says clearly in the pasuk v'yirishta v'yashavta bo, but also as Chazal tell us that anywhere, wherever the said Torah says an expression ki savoy or something similar, it always means after Yerusha, after taking it over and settling in the land. And since that's the translation as the meaning of ki savoy all over, it's understood that even though yes, technically we learn it out from the fact that the Torah specifies this idea in one place that ki savoy means after you inherited and you settled it, nevertheless, it's within the word Savoy itself as well. Furthermore, when we speak about Yerusha v'Yeshiva taking over and settling the land, we're not only speaking about an individual taking his part of the land, that after he gets his portion, he could now do the mitzvah, in this case, the mitzvah of Bikurim, but rather it's referring to the full 14 years that the Yidden conquered the land, divided the land, all of Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe says this was discussed another time in a different Sicha, the diuk of Rashi in the beginning of our Sedra, where Rashi says, Magid teaches us that they only became obligated in Bikurim after they shekavshu, that they conquered the land, v'chilkua, and they divided it. Rashi does not say, as the Pasuk says, la'achara Yerusha v'yeshiva, after taking it over and settling in it, but as the Rebbe explains in another Sicha, that what this means is Rashi is trying to emphasize and tell us that the words v'yirishta v'yeshavta bo over here means conquering and dividing the whole land, which took 14 years. And therefore, when we say Savoy, this idea of Yerishta v'Yashavta, and including this whole idea that it's fully, completely taken over, is also included in the word Savoy. And how is that? Says the Rebbe, because the real translation, the real meaning of coming in somewhere, means coming in completely. The Rebbe compares this to a Gemara that says, Bia b'miktzas Loi shma bia, coming in a little bit is not considered coming in. The context of that Gemara is referring to a person putting in, let's say, just his hand into a house that had tsaras, that was tummy from tsaras, but if he just came in a little bit, it's not as if his whole body went in. If there's something lacking in coming in, then it's not really coming in properly. This is also similar to the idea of going in a mikveh, where one goes into the water of a toilet and he becomes pure. That's the idea of toiveling in a mikveh. Then the whole body, including every last hair, has to be in the mikveh. Says the Rebbe, this is why we said that the word Savoy means after Yerusha, after conquering it and settling in it. Because only then are you completely in Eretz Yisrael in a way of Isyashvas that you're really settled there. Furthermore, we said before that it has to be all the Yidden. Why is that? Because of the Achdus of Yidden, as long as not all the Yidden are settled, all the Yidden that need to be in this part of Eretz Yisrael are settled, then really what's lacking is in this Savoy of properly coming in of every single Yid. Even though technically by him, he already has his portion and he's settled in his portion, but really as a result of the Achdus, we're never settled as long as not all the Yidden are settled. And therefore, Ki Savoy coming in properly into Eretz Yisrael is only after it was taken over and divided completely. Says the Rebbe, now we'll start seeing the connection between Savoy and Chai Elul. Because the Chidush of Chassidus, which was revealed through the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, is that the avodah of Torah and mitzvahs has to be done in a way of Savoy, which means we immerse ourselves, we completely go into the avodah to the extent that there isn't one little point of the person, one little aspect of the person that's not permeated completely with the avodah of Torah and mitzvahs, as we will go on to explain. And just like in Savo, there's two ideas. There's the general idea of Savo, just coming into the land. And then there are the details, as we say, how the Savo is that v'yirishta, v'yashavtaba, you take it over, you're settled in it. So too in Chai Elul, we're going to see that there's two similar ideas. One connected to the fact that is the Yom Haledes of the Baal Shem Tov, who is the founder of Toras Achsidus HaKlolus, general Chassidus. And the second idea, the Yom Haledes of the Alter Rebbe, who is the founder of Toras Chassidus Chabad. The difference between them is, as a pisgam of the Frierdiker Rebbe that said that the Baal Shem Tov showed how we need to serve Hashem. That's similar to the general idea of Savoy. In other words, the general idea of how we need to go ahead and serve Hashem. The Alter Rebbe came along and showed how we can be an Oved Hashem, how we can serve Hashem. That means to bring it down practically, including and mainly into the details. This is going to be like the idea of V'yirishta, V'yashavta, actually getting involved and settled fully in it, as we will see later. Says the Rebbe, we're going to explain this by first explaining that which is known, that the Gilui of Toras Achsidus is a preparation for Bias HaMashiach. It's famously known, the answer that the Mashiach said to the Baal Shem Tov, that when is Mashiach going to come? When the well springs of Chassidus will spread to the outside, that's when Mashiach is going to come. Now it says in Kabbalah that until Mashiach, all of the Giluyim, all of the revelations in the world of Elikus are coming from the level called Chitzonius Atik. Atik being a very, very high level, in Keser, etc. And Chitzonius Atik, only the external part of Atik. Mashiach is going to accomplish what's called Pnimius Atik. Now, since the preparation for something is always going to be similar to the thing that it's preparing for, and here we're saying Chassidus is preparing for this special Gilui of Pnimius Atik, we need to say that the Chidush of Chassidus is in this idea of Pnimius, because it's going to be revealing the Pnimius. It's revealing the Pnimius, it's accomplishing the Pnimius in the Avodah of a Yid, in his Torah and mitzvahs, and this is why Chassidus is also going to be Mamshech, the Pnimius of godliness, this level called Pnimius Atik. What is the difference between Pnimius, internal, and Chitzonius, and the external, on the simple level by a person? Pnimius means how a person is for himself, to himself. Chitzonius is more the way he's already connected to the outside, to the other person, those that are outside of himself. The difference between this and in the avodah of a person is, when a person is doing something only with his chitzonius, only with his external, he's only externally interested in it, he's only doing it on an external level, he's not completely involved with his whole etzem, with his whole pnimius. Rather, it's only, he's going to be involved only on a superficial or chitzoniistic level. Within this itself, it's only going to be that aspect inside of him, that level that has some sort of connection with that chutz, with that outside, that specific thing that we're dealing with right now. And therefore, when we're speaking about chitzonius, the person and the thing that he's dealing with and the thing that he's doing is always going to remain two separate things. However, when a person is involved in something with a pnimius, it's really coming from the depths of the person and he's really involved in it completely. Because as far as his pnimius is concerned, there isn't really room for anything outside of his very essence. And therefore, whenever he's involved in something, even a small little detail, if he's involved with a pnimius, if he's involved with his etzem, with his essence, then the thing is becoming one with him. It's like his own mitzias. They're all one. There's no such thing as something outside of himself. So whatever he's going to do, he's going to be doing completely, he's completely involved because it's coming from his pnimius. Says the Rebbe, this is what Chassidus is all about. Chassidus, and generally the idea of pnimius HaTorah, which is called the neshama of Torah, reveals the nekuda of chayis of a yid in all matters of Torah and mitzvahs. What's the idea of chayis? What is vitality? That it becomes one with the thing that it's giving life to. It's not like there is something, a neshama that's alive in a body. It's becoming one with the thing that he's giving life to. The chayis, the vitality, is not adding new details in the thing that it's giving life. That is, that we look at a body, so a living body has the same amount of limbs and organs like a dead body. So the actual chayis is not adding anything new, and it's not anything separate. The actual chayis is not something separate that's giving life into the body, but rather the neshama and the guf become right now like one, that every single part of the body is absolutely alive. And the reason for this is because chayis is the neshama, the pnimius of the person. And therefore, in the place where the chayis is there, where the chayis reaches, it touches the person in every single detail. Says the Rebbe, that's exactly what chassidus is and what it accomplishes in Torah and mitzvahs. Learning of Torah and doing mitzvahs could be in a way that the person and the Torah mitzvahs that he's doing remain separate. In fact, even when a Yid is learning Torah, which as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, there's becoming a yichud nifla, this most amazing bond, that there's nothing like it, where a person is becoming one with the Torah, and he's becoming, as a result of that, becoming one with Hashem. But that's as far as his seichel is concerned. The part of his body that's learning the Torah, his seichel is becoming one with Hashem. Chassidus, however, is demanding and shows the way how every single Yid can reveal his own pnimius, his own chayis, the neshama, and as a result of the pnimius of the Yid, he's completely one with all matters of Torah and mitzvahs. Says the Rebbe, this is also the explanation. The Rebbe says, B'derech Efsher, why we say that Chassidus is a preparation to Bias HaMashiach, where we said before what's going to be revealed is pnimius atik. And the Rebbe explains, all the different levels of Ishtalshalus, to the highest one, which we referred to before as chitzonius atik, in other words, the highest before dealing with pnimius atik, is always leaving some room for something that's outside of, so to speak, the essence of Hashem. And therefore, even when they are revealed in the world, it's still in a way that it's not completely negating the whole concept of a world. In other words, it's always leaving room as if there could be something else. Pnimius of Atik, on the other hand, means the very essence of Elikus. As far as that level is concerned, there is nothing that's outside of Hashem. And therefore, when Pnimius Atik, when this deepest level of Elikus is revealed in the Olam, it's in a way that the world itself and its own entity and its own existence with Elikus, so to speak, become one. Einoid Movadeh, there's nothing outside of Hashem. Says the Rebbe, now, within the chayis of the person himself, that spreads itself in the body, we also know that there are two levels. There's the general chayis that gives life to the whole body equally, with all of his organs, with all of his limbs. And in this aspect of chayis, there's no difference at all between one limb and the other. And then there's something called a chayis prati, the individual vitality, which is measured according to each limb, according to its own special chemistry and characteristics and so on. As far as this chayis is concerned, if you look at something like the heel on the bottom of the foot, this is called, the Rebbe quotes a different Maimori Chazal on this, that it's called the Malach HaMavis Shabbat. In other words, here's a place that there's no chayis at all. So again, there's the general chayis, which is all over equally, and then there's the chayis where some Evarim have more and some hardly have anything at all. Says the Rebbe, this is going to be the difference between the chayis of Chassidus that was drawn down through the Baal Shem Tov, and the chayis, the way it was drawn down and revealed through the Alter Rebbe. That's going to be similar to these two types of chayis. The Baal Shem Tov revealed the general chayis in Torah and mitzvahs, which generally is expressed through things like the idea of emunah. And even though, of course, the koyach of emunah also penetrates and permeates all the koyachas of the person and causes that he should do all of his Torah and mitzvahs in a way of chayis, or the lebedikite and so on, completely permeating them. And as the pasuk says, "V'tzadik be'emunah yichid," that as a result of the emunah, the tzaddik has chayis now in his whole avodah. But it still doesn't mean that the emunah had actually permeated each one of the faculties also from the perspective of the individuality of that koyach itself. In other words, what's more being focused on is the common denominator, the common theme, the general idea that all koyachs have together. It's all connected with the nekuda of the emunah of the neshama. And the Rebbe gives an example like in the chayis klali, in the general chayis that penetrates and all of the Ivarim and is one with them, but nevertheless it's still not connected with the individuality of that Aver. It's more, again, just the general idea of all the parts of the body together. They're all part of one body that's alive right now. The Alter Rebbe, on the other hand, brought in the chayis into each individual koyach of the neshama, and into each individual avoid of Torah and mitzvahs also, to take into consideration the individual idea, content, and quality of that particular koyach. More similar to the chayis prati, to individual chayis, which is measured according to the details of every aver. And this is why that's connected to Chabad. What's the idea of Chabad? Seichel. The idea of the way Seichel works, the way intellect works, is that it actually connects with the details, with the aspects, with the specific measurements, so to speak, of the idea being understood, and in a way that's getting involved with all the particular faculties of the person and affecting them in what we call a pneumistic way, in a more internal way, even taking the individual koiches and aspects of that koyach into consideration. Now, which one of these are greater? Says the Rebbe, even though the chayis prati, the individual chayis, seems to be a lower darga in the chayis than the general chayis. Because number one, the individual chayis is much more limited. It's measured according to the particular limb. Secondly, the bitul that the aver has to the chayis is not on such a deep level, because the chayis is still allowing for the individuality of that aver, in other words, for that part. So to speak, there is still very much the room of the aver itself, of that particular limb taking up space. So it's not only about the chayas. Nevertheless, there is a certain advantage in that individual chayas over the general chayas, to the extent that a whole new concept is coming into the equation over here. And that is, the actual fact that the general chayas does not connect with the individuality of each and every aver shows that that's still not representing and expressing the real shleimus of chayas. And that's why it didn't impact and get involved in the individuality and the special characteristics of that aver. It's only in the chayas prati that really permeated the aver, even as far as the individual aspects of the aver are concerned. And in a way of chayas, which we said chayas means it really permeates it completely, that really is what represents the greatest chayas and the shleimus of the chayas in actuality. Says the Rebbe, the same thing is true in regards to Torah's Chassidus Chabad. It's only through the fact that the Alter Rebbe drew down the chayes of Chassidus, but bringing it also into the individual koiches of the nefesh, according to their individual needs and characteristic. He brought down completely the Torah of the Baal Shem Tov, and this is also why the individual koiches are now going to be permeated with the chayes of Chassidus. Says the Rebbe, now we can see the connection between Chai Elul and Parsha Savo. The general chayes of Torah Chassidus HaKlolis, that's hinted in the general idea of Savo, which means you come into something completely that is coming in completely having a chayes in all matters of Torah and mitzvahs. And that's the general point of chayes that Torah Chassidus gave in the avodah of Torah and mitzvahs. But then there's stage number two. We need to draw down this general koyach, this general chayes, also into the individual koyches by themselves. And that's the idea of v'yirishta v'yashavta, but taking it over and really being settled in it. That means you're drawing down the general chayas of Chassidus in a siyashvus, in a settled way, into the details of the koyches hanefesh, and that happens through Torah's Chassidus Chabad.